welcome to the Dutch Mentor. It is once again, it's Monday morning. It's our time to chat about leadership. And I have a great guest today, Paul McGuire, who's coming all the way from Florida, I believe, today in
Yes,
the
sir.
sunny state. But I think we're going to cover many states and many parts of the country in his story career. Without any further ado, Paul, why don't you introduce yourself to the audience and let's see where we can go.
Great. Thank you, Walter. Good morning, everyone. My name is Paul McGuire. I'm the president and CEO of the McGuire Group. We're a small consulting firm based out of Southwest Florida. Prior to starting the McGuire Group, I served in several leadership roles in the New York metropolitan area. And I guess working backwards would be best. I retired from the Long Island State Veterans Home as Associate Executive Director. Before joining them, I was the Senior Vice President and Administrator for St. Mary's Healthcare System for Children. Those were my two long term care opportunities that I wrapped up my career with. And prior to that, I spent the rest of my career in the acute care arena. I was the administrator on site for Flushing Hospital Medical Center, part of the Medicis Health Network. Prior to joining them, I was with Jamaica Hospital. I spent 17 years at Catholic Medical Centers of Brooklyn and Queens. Walter and I have a common thread. I began my career as a paramedic in the city of New York, serving the folks of South Queens. And that really brings us back over 40 years. So I tried to do that rather quickly. My story is my story. I'm not sure it's interesting or cute, but it has brought me here today.
Well, welcome, Paul. And listen, 40 years is something. I'm three quarters of the way there. I always say that I have my 8 more years left before I get into retirement age. Although I don't ever see myself retiring. And I really, what we're doing today in our Monday morning show and what we do in our consulting and coaching businesses is really about connecting to people. It is about finding that young emerging leader, in other words, really, it's like a mirror image of self, but then many years ago, and how to help them overcome some of the gaps that they experience between doing and leading. So tell us a little bit about from your perspective, when you grew up as a paramedic and you went into administration. What was the experience like for you to get to really transition from doing to leading, and what did it take, and how long did it take? Because that's often the question I'm asked.
Well, it took a while. When I became a paramedic in 1980, I did that without college experience. So I became a clinically trained expert, if you will, in pre hospital care. It was a wonderful life, a high adrenaline driven life. We all loved the lights and sirens and the thrill of it all. It's a young man's game. Um, in doing that, I had really the pleasure and the fortunate position to be in where folks mentored me. I became a paramedic educator. I started developing classes in advanced cardiac life support. I started teaching CPR in the community in addition to being a paramedic.
Yeah.
Um, you develop skills doing that. You have to coordinate class, equipment, staff, personnel, venues. And I started to develop skills. And in the background, I went back to college. That is a very long journey for me. I did all of my college learning as an adult learner. Um, as I evolved as a paramedic, I became a field supervisor overseeing operations in Southeast Queens. Catholic Medical Center at the time became the largest pre hospital care provider from the voluntary sector in the New York City EMS system. So from Mary Immaculate Hospital, we evolved into St. John's Queens Hospital, St. Mary's of Brooklyn, St. Joseph's of Flushing, and we became the largest provider in Brooklyn and Queens providing EMS service to the city of New York that was hospital based. We also developed an EMS institute that came as an offshoot to those early classes we were developing, teaching CPR and advanced life support. So we really started to grow, develop, and for me, going from a field supervisor to assistant director and then director at the division, you develop the skills that are required. And again, in the background, still in college as an adult learner. from being the director at Mary Immaculate Hospital. Catholic Medical Centers kept developing, kept growing, and there was an opportunity for me to lead the corporate entity and its pre-hospital care environment. It was interesting. We lived an interesting time then. The fire department started to look to merge with EMS. I had an opportunity to have a seat at the table as those discussions evolved and how we could get hospital-based organizations involved in the fire department. And the fire department recognized that the hospital community had medical expertise. They brought operational expertise. Together, we thought we could do a better job. And ultimately, I believe in 1994 or so, that merger started to
Yeah.
formalize.
Yeah, interesting. How did he? So we have. I didn't realize how similar our career paths. I did essentially speaking the same thing. I went back to school in my mid 30s to get my bachelor's and then my master's and my fellowship right after that. The interesting that and people have to remember that, and that's really for the listener. You're never too old to go back to school, right? And I run across that quite often. Is that people say, "Well, I'm too old. I can't do this. I can't do that." Listen, it is about your big dream, right? And sometimes the dream comes to you later in life, or you change career paths, similar to what you have taken a natural path of emergency services, then into the hospital. So, talk a little bit about what it was like to lead back then, the styles of leadership back then, versus what it is that you experience, and what is more likely the leadership style of today. To see if you can make a contrast there.
Sure. Um, and I'll apologize. I have a dog who may appear in the background. My
We
wife's going
love
to
dogs.
manage.
They're certainly
Uh,
welcome.
he's an American boxer. He's a good guy.
Perfect.
Anyway, um, the style back then for me, leading that group of men and women, was truly a top-down paramilitary type of approach. It lent itself to the structure of New York City's EMS. It lent itself to the structure of the fire department. It was a little different from hospital structure. Um, I was lucky to be based in a hospital organization because it gave me the contrast and I think additional tools to become a better leader, to become more collaborative, and to recognize that pre hospital care wasn't just this freestanding entity. We weren't the group of renegades that were based in the garage. We were part of a care delivery system that provided emergency care in the community, brought that care into the emergency department, and then it evolved and moved on to definitive care. Um, Either the operating room or the surgical suite or the critical care unit. But we became part of a larger team. So it kind of blended that paramilitary piece, that very structured, organized type of organization, and blended it into healthcare. And it was interesting to me. Um, I always embraced the fact that I came from a clinical background. It helped me, I think, make better critical decisions as a leader. Um, Today, again, as my career evolved, I went from pre hospital care to emergency medicine. So instead of being the guy, I guess as a metaphor, catching the football, catching the call, I became the guy receiving the call in the emergency department. What was being brought in? How could we manage that? We were a level one trauma center at Jamaica Hospital. We were a stroke center, a chest pain center. At the time I joined the organization, we had a multi-million dollar construction project going on to expand emergency services. We were seeing 85,000 visits a year, and this is in the late 90s. And as we evolved, and despite that construction, we got up over 100,000 visits a year in an
Wow.
inner city emergency room in Southeast Queens.
Yeah.
So it evolved, it got bigger. And again, my experiences with CMC on the hospital side, combined with those pre hospital care experiences, allowed me to really get the big picture and to represent the pre hospital care community and the emergency medicine community to the larger health community.
Yeah, it really helps you relate and really understand the value stream from beginning to end, right? Where the patient dials 911 all the way through the hospital system, even through discharge. So if I fast forward that experience from pre-hospital to the emergency department to even your latest stint that you did during the COVID months at one of the New York City Health and Hospital long-term care facilities, where you helped them, on an interim role. What kind of leadership style did it take at that point in time versus, and I'm contrasting the command and control and EMS, the paramilitary, to the blend of that maybe at Jamaica to what it is today. Any insight on that?
Well, before I get us right there, I want to say sometimes careers take a turn. I was
Sure.
blessed to have a mentor, um, Cosmo Lacosta, who's kind of a legendary guy in the healthcare community in New York City. Got hold of me while I was in the acute care world and said, long-term care license, McGuire, get it. And I thought I was done with school. I was done with studying. But he convinced me that I needed to get that extra 3 credit class, even though I had my graduate degree, and study for my licensure, which I did, and I successfully passed. And his chirping in my ear was the constant story of, you don't know when the job of your dreams or the opportunity of your lifetime will present. And what if you need that to get that job?
Yeah.
So I fought him tooth and nail to do it, but I did it. And sure enough, that brought me to the opportunity at St. Mary's Healthcare System for Children, and then the Vets Home, and then consulting in the long-term care world. I developed subject matter expertise in pediatric long-term care with St. Mary's, serving a very fragile medical population of young people who needed long-term care services. The Vets Home was a wonderful opportunity to serve yet another segment of our population, the American veteran, the American serviceman who gave us our freedoms, who provided us our opportunities to chat here today, in their time of need as they suffered from post-war injuries, post-war illness, etc. That opportunity and St. Mary's, and in the background, a lot of capital projects really helped me to develop a more global picture as to how long-term care worked, how care delivery worked in um, environments of scarce dollars that were being competed for, and how to develop capital projects that made sense. Getting to retirement and then thinking, well, this will be quiet and this will be done. I'll just do some nice consulting. COVID came along, and I had the opportunity to serve as interim CEO for Susan Smith McKinney, which is a long-term care facility at Health and Hospitals. We were in the midst of the COVID swamp. Um, they were stretched very, very thin in terms of their leadership and bed capability, and they were struggling with this infectious disease. So how do you tie all of this together? Our pre-hospital care world and our emergency medicine world taught me to deal with infectious disease outbreaks. Things like H1N1 and Ebola resonate with guys like you and I who've
Yeah.
been around doing this for a while. Those infectious disease models, those emergency preparedness templates that we developed way back then, got dusted off and helped Health and Hospitals, and helped me develop plans to manage COVID in the borough of Brooklyn, which was completely overwhelmed. I had a great team there. Everyone was a can do provider. Nobody said no. All ideas were put out on the table. That's my style. And I tried to get out of people's way when they had best practices and best ideas and be a facilitator and at times a bulldozer to knock down the walls to help us achieve success. Our medical director, again, phenomenal at segregating populations, getting them into cohorts, treating them aggressively, um, getting them well, and preventing disease spread in a contained environment.
Yeah, it's really interesting that, and thank you for sharing that for the journey. You can see that the change of that paramilitary style to more that servant 360 type leadership as the environment around us changed, but also as we change, as people will learn over time what is more effective, right? How to get that ball across the finish line more consistently. And of course, the people who are working for us or on our team are also from a different generation. So we have to learn to adapt, being teachable, and really, the takeaway from what it is that you talk about is that and your mentor had it right. We sometimes think of our pathway to wherever we want to go as a straight line, but it is really the left and right hand turns along that journey, even sometimes going way out of your comfort zone. And I didn't take the long-term care certification, but my father made me take typing classes when I was 13 years old, and I think he was out of his mind. And I resented him deeply then. I would love to kiss him and hug him today. Right? It is so we as people have to be open to receiving new things in order to be able to expand our opportunities. And when it presents itself, you can. So I would like to transition a little bit to how you supported yourself and what was important along the way. For example, you are a fellow of the American College of Healthcare Executives. Talk a little bit about to the audience about when did you start becoming interested and why did you start the journey and what has it provided to you over the span of your career?
Okay. So the American College of Healthcare Executives and my involvement really began in the, I want to say, mid 90s, later 90s, when the Metropolitan Healthcare Administrator Association was the dominant New York City healthcare executive group. That evolved. I know in a previous interview you did with Adam, he really laid out how that occurred, but we essentially merged three healthcare executive groups into one cohesive chapter of the American College of Healthcare Executives called Healthcare Leaders of New York. Um, it was great to be part of that. And, as we talked earlier, what would be my messages to these young early careerists and mid careerists who want to be successful? Say yes and get involved. I got involved with MAHA. I was part of the transition team to bring those groups together and become an official chapter. I ultimately became president of Healthcare Leaders of New York after serving on the board and as their vice president. You have to say yes. It's easy to say no. It's easy to say I'm too busy. It's easy to say I don't have time. Make the time and invest in yourself. The skill sets you will get are very, very different. Um, Someone who is emerging as a department head, an assistant department head, a service line administrator may not have the opportunity to develop educational programs for large groups of diverse people, may not have the opportunity to develop a venue and a celebration of 400 people, bring together speakers from various parts of the healthcare sector. Those are important skills that you may not get in your paid job, but you'll get them by being involved in an organization like Healthcare Leaders of New York. And you'll get exposure. You'll meet other people who are on similar paths, different paths. You'll meet mentors. You will meet friends you didn't know you've met
Hmm.
until you
Yeah.
met them. Um, and they will help you and they will guide you and you will serve as a guide to them as well. So say yes, get involved, um, do the things that take you out of your comfort zone. If you get too comfortable, you're doing it wrong. You want to find something that challenges you. And if that's not at your paid workplace as you move in your career, that's okay.
Yeah.
Find other places to do that.
Yeah, I think it is that's a very, very good message. It is a safe zone to learn and to pick up things across the value stream that you otherwise would not have exposure to is a strong message. I got involved a little bit in the sponsorship committee over the years and a few other areas. Of course, I am heavily engaged in the education component of that, and of course, the big scary monster that many people are talking about is going for the board of governors exam. Actually, I'm prepping and I'm hoping to recruit you and many other veterans to do a review course together in the fall, and maybe pick a topic or two to help pay it forward to those people who are going to be planning on taking their board exam at the end of this year, or maybe even go to Congress in March of next year in Chicago. So tell me a little bit about, or tell the audience a little bit about, what did you do? Why did you find it to be important to become a fellow, and how did you prepare for that?
Well, I think the Fauci credential is, on a national level, the recognized credential in healthcare leadership. And here's why. Um, we live in our New York world, if you will. Some of the finest academic institutions in the world. And we have graduates coming from Columbia, Cornell, Hofstra's program, just folks coming from further northeast, Boston, a little further south, Philly. We have such a great collection of academic institutions. And I say, I'm a graduate of Hofstra's MHA program. Walter, you might have went to Cornell. Jim might have went to Ithaca, and Bill might have went to Cornell. What differentiates us? We have MHAs. Some of us might have focused more on the business side. Some of us might have focused more on the finance side. Some of us might have come from the clinical world. What separates us? The Fauci separates us. This is the next level. This integrates your knowledge base of the provision of healthcare, governance, leadership, finance, puts it all together. It tests you in your ability. It assures that you are a well-rounded executive, and it's a tough exam. I was blessed to serve on the exam committee for ACHE and travel to Chicago twice a year to develop tough questions to ask the next generation of leaders. It's a wonderful organization. It's big picture. And again, it will expose you as a credentialed, board certified healthcare executive to other credentialed, board certified healthcare executives. And that creates opportunities. Where will your career take you? And to your earlier point, Walter, it's never really linear. We can make lefts, we can make rights, we could go around the block twice, but we keep moving, we hope, in a forward direction and growing as people.
Mhm. Yeah, phenomenal. It is. I've experienced the journey myself. I really found it to be very interesting and a challenge. But if you dedicate if you dedicate enough time and focus, if you set your goal on something and you make sure that you ask for help and guidance and mentorship along the way, this is a very doable task. If you don't put enough time into it, the results speak for itself. The failure rate on the board of governors exam is rather high, and it is for those people who come into it a bit with a bit of arrogance and say, "I got this," and they really haven't really spent enough time to understand 11 subject areas. Again, I can speak for Paul, for Adam, for others. Part of the role of the fellow is to mentor. That I'm available. That if there's questions, I'm sure that Paul is similar. That pay it forward is part of the DNA of a fellow. It's actually part of our recertification program to be able to be a fellow in good standing. So we're here to help those people who are really interested to help and guide you. Of course, the hard work, the blood, sweat, and tears you need to put into it if you really desire that credential. And the cool thing is, there's actually an official credential you can have behind your name, like you and I have, and it is recognized immediately by people. So that there is some benefit to it on the back end as well. So
Agreed.
so as we're starting to wrap up with just a few minutes left, I would love to hear what is your message today after with 40 years of experience, clearly robust across the entire value stream. What is the message that you would give today to somebody who is 25 to 30 years old, completed their MHA, MBA, MPA, getting into the first supervisor role? What guidance would you provide to them?
So, again, I'm going to be repetitive and redundant. I'm going to say yes. Don't say no. No takes you down a dead end street. Say yes. If you're asked to be on a committee, if you're asked to do something outside of your comfort zone in your professional environment, that will provide opportunities to work in cross-cultural, cross fields, do it. Learn from one another. Be prepared and do your homework. As you start to look at other opportunities and other career opportunities, as you're going to prepare for those and interview for those, preparation's everything. You got to do the homework. I've interviewed people for various roles across various organizations who did not know what my organization did. They didn't get hired. The information is available. The internet is rich. And as you create your professional network, you can learn about organizations and specifically try to understand their culture. Ask questions and be curious. Don't sit in an interview and at the end, and when you are asked, "Do you have any questions for us?" Nope. Wrong answer. You're going back to no. Yes, I have questions. Talk to me about your organizational culture. Talk to me about the goals for this particular department in the next 5 years. What are the inherent problems today? What would you be looking for me to solve when I walk in the door? How can I do my best job? And who would I look to work with to be successful? Ask these questions. If you don't, you're just not impressing your interviewer. The be prepared part, over and over again. As a leader, it's an obligation. It really is. It's not necessarily about being the loudest voice in the room either. It's about, you get 2 ears and 1 mouth, so listen twice as much as you speak. You'll enjoy greater success. Try to take in what's around you. And again, there are lots of anecdotes and sayings and, sayings carved in marble walls by greater minds than mine. Luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity, Seneca. A great thought. Choice favors the prepared mind, Pasteur. These are not McGuire thoughts. These are folks who've thought this long and hard before I came to be. You got to learn from that. And you got to be open to it. I learn every day. I'm retired and I learn every day. And if I think I'm done learning, my wife reminds me I'm not.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Listen, Paul, I cannot agree with you more. I think it's a great message. I don't want to add anything to it because it would take away from your message itself. Thank you very much for joining me this morning to come for a chat, and I hope we can do this again in the future. It is the people who have been there, done that, have so much to give, and I think that the younger folks, especially those who are really eager to continue to climb the career ladder, are paying attention to those who have been there and continue to learn. It's an open mindset, as you talk about, that will allow you to absorb and to create opportunity for oneself. Um, I hope that we can connect over the fall sometime when we should put something together for a review to again pay it forward to the next generation of fellows. In the meantime, enjoy retirement in Florida. I hope that people will pick you up and again they can find you online at the McGuire Group for consulting services. Just don't stress them too much. No more 12 months per year, but 6 months out of the year is perfectly fine, right? At least that's what the wife says. So, folks, again, as we're going to wrap it up, we have a great show and guest next week, Leah Tall from Tall Healthcare. We're going to have a conversation about the role of the recruiter in your advancement of your career. And Leah comes with deep experiences and lots of local knowledge in the New York City metropolitan area. And I'm really looking forward to what she has to say. Again, if anybody is interested, we have our Dutch Mentor Leadership Academy starting on the 20th next week on Wednesday. Or we have a condensed version in a 6-week program, the Pure Leadership Power Program, starting on the 27th. If you're interested in it, learning more, just go to my website, thedutchmentor.com, or email me at thedutchmentor@gmail.com. Everybody have a wonderful day. Enjoy your time, and make sure that you pay attention to your cues and make sure you take action in order to be able to continue to advance in your career. Paul, thank you very much. I really appreciate your time, and we'll talk soon again.
Walter, thank you very much for the opportunity. Have a great day.
You're quite welcome, sir.